I want to thank you for joining us here today as we announce a comprehensive set of reforms for protecting children in New York State. I do want to note we're joined by two legislators from the Erie County Legislature, Legislator Patrick Burke, representing Buffalo and Cheektowaga, as well as Legislator Peter Savage, representing Buffalo and Village of Kenmore. So I appreciate them for coming here today. When I was inaugurated Erie County Executive, there were a lot of things that were on our plate. Bills lease, economic development. I truly had not thought about issues related to Child Protective Services. As I've said before, the worst days of my administration were on the days of the death of a child. The vast majority of which the public really never hears about because of unsafe sleeping conditions and the like. Already this year, 6 infants have died as a result of unsafe sleeping conditions. Those are things that could have been prevented. The vast majority of the cases that people hear about regarding deaths of children, we have heard about because they've been described in the media, because the child has not died as a result of an unsafe sleeping condition, they died at the hands of an abusive adult. In fact, since I've been county executive, there have been 6 children that have died at the hands of an abusive adult in Erie County. Roderick Manny Geiger III was slashed to death by his mentally ill grandmother. Austin Smith, unfortunately, was beaten to death by his mother's boyfriend. Abi Fada Muhammad was brutally beaten to death by his stepfather. Gage Seneca was beaten to death by his mother's boyfriend. Ian Brooks is alleged to have been beaten to death by his mother's boyfriend. The most recent case was Maylon Smith, in which there has been no arrest made in the case. 6 young children should have been in the happiest days of their lives. 6 young children who unfortunately were taken by individuals who should have been there to mentor them, to love them. In each case, as Erie County Executive, I demanded to know, could we have done more in each of these matters? As we've discussed already, after each case we looked into it, I demanded a top-to-bottom assessment of Child Protective Services, and we've done so much. We've done a tremendous amount of Child Protective Services, and I want to thank the 2 people to my left, Commissioner Carol Dankert-Maurer and Deputy County Executive Richard Tovey, for not only joining me here today, but for all the work that they've put in, countless hours, and it has been countless hours, to change Child Protective Services and the way it's being delivered in Erie County. We, as you know, identified caseworkers who had done an inadequate job. They were fired. Supervisors were suspended. We reassigned the head of Child Protective Services. We didn't stop there. We strengthened the supervisory support structure that exists for all of our Child Protective Service workers in Erie County. We placed caseworkers in Buffalo Public Schools for the first time. We set up collaborations with children's hospitals and sisters hospitals, the 2 hospitals that receive the most cases of suspected child abuse, so that we have CPS workers in those hospitals at the time the individuals are brought in. We didn't stop there. We've made substantive changes across the board in Child Protective Services, and it shows as a result of the very good review that we received from the Office of Children and Family Services in New York recently. We're not stopping with just the changes that we implemented in Erie County, because we realize there's only so much that we can do. There are systemic issues on the state level that need to be addressed if we're truly to reform Child Protective Services. Because right now we have a system that's stacked against children. That's not how it should be. And it's stacked against CPS workers. New York State's Child Protective Services Act was approved in 1973. And if you think about that, it's been 41 years since it was passed, but it really hasn't been substantially revised since then. And as noted on the screen, each Child Protective Service case is required to receive and investigate child abuse and maltreatment reports, protect children from further abuse or maltreatment, provide rehabilitative services for the children. That's all well and good. We agree that needs to be done. But when a system was created 41 years ago and hasn't been substantively changed since then, it's going to be behind the times. Today's children deserve a system that is not created and running for 1970s. They deserve a system that's protecting them for the 21st century. Statewide reform is badly needed. There's over 150 headlines of child abuse reported statewide just since October of 2013. representing 60 of the 62 counties in New York State. Now, reform is needed for various reasons, but the main reason is it's not just to ensure that we deal with the issue after the child has been abused, but to prevent child abuse. And that's not what the system does today. The system is reactive. We need reform that is going to be proactive to protect against child abuse, as well as to ensure if abuse appears to have occurred, that Child Protective Services has the tools at its disposal to identify the abusers and put them in jail. Because the children of New York State do deserve a government that is proactively stopping abuse and neglect. We've continued to do our part in Erie County, and we will continue going forward, but it's time that our partners in state government do the same. To pass a comprehensive reform package that actually protects children. Now, pending legislation in the state Senate that is no doubt well-intentioned actually makes it harder for CPS workers to do their jobs. That's why we in Erie County have developed our own set of proposals, which will get to the root of the problems that the workers face every day in trying to protect children in our community. This is a comprehensive package of reforms that is proactive in nature. The reforms we introduce today are vital in bringing New York State's Child Protective Services system into the 21st century and will aid immediately in the investigation and prosecution of suspected abuse. When CPS law was created over 40 years ago, there was no conception of either the challenges the law would face today or the tools that would be available to CPS workers to address these issues. Think about it. In October of 2013, when there was 150 headlines of child abuse were reported, we had all these tools at our disposal that we did not have in the 1970s, just starting with the internet and starting with the availability of getting access to information immediately. We didn't have those in the 1970s. We should have them now, but we're still working on an antiquated system. In all, there are 19 proposals, and these proposals that we're submitting today get to the root of the problem by immediately making it easier for CPS workers to do their job and to punish those who hurt children. Now, we've made it easy for the Senate and Assembly. They really don't have to do much. We've written the bills. There's 19 in all. We've written the accompanying bill memorandum. All the senators and Assembly members have to do is introduce them, put their names saying they stand for protecting children. There's not much more that they need to do. We did all the heavy lifting. There's a lot of people in county government I have to thank for doing that, including the two individuals here. Brian Brave from the Office of the Social Services Department, Judy Shanley, Evan Caspar, Jeremy Toth from the County Attorney's Office, Mike Saragusa from the County Attorney's Office, and others, who worked very hard to identify the bills that needed to be done. And these bills are 19. The first one creates a presumption of neglect if there's a single incident of excessive corporal punishment. We're going to get into each of these a little later. Carol will describe each of these a little more, but first we'll just go through the 19. Second, create a presumption of neglect against the mother when a child is born with a positive toxicology report. This is the case today. Third, allows the Department of Social Services to subpoena records from private agencies for use in any investigation of a child abuse or neglect report. They don't have that power now. They should. Fourth, require law enforcement and other governmental agencies to supply CPS with records during an investigation of child abuse or maltreatment within 72 hours of a request. CPS doesn't even have the power to get it from police agencies now, nevertheless within a very short time period. We believe you need to increase the penalties for making false allegations of suspected abuse or neglect of a child or of a vulnerable person. We believe you need to establish a penalty for making false allegations of suspected abuse or neglect of a child. Unfortunately, too many people are using the system to get back at spouses, other individuals, and our caseworkers are spending too much time going after false reports, blatantly false reports, than those that are actually valid reports. We require that mandated reporters, and there are mandated reporters, get updated on their field work or training regarding identification and reporting of child abuse and maltreatment every 3 years. If somebody learned about this 30 to 40 years ago, they may not know what actually is child abuse and neglect today, or what shows child abuse and neglect. We want them to get updated training every 3 years. This is an important one, we think, as well. Right now, the crime for endangering the welfare of a child is nothing but a misdemeanor. We believe we need to create a new Class D felony offense for endangering the welfare of a child. The Office of Children and Family Services should transmit critical information to the local CPS office. They're not required to do that. Information that they have is not required to be transmitted to the local CPS agency, but it should. This is going to surprise some folks. Social service districts now are not allowed to prohibit informal child care providers who are the subject of an indicated report or have certain felony convictions from running daycares. Did you know that? Most people don't realize it, but if it's an informal daycare, they may actually have been subject to many reports in the past of child abuse, and they're still allowed to do it. There's information, we need to update the statewide automated child welfare information system to allow for the storing of images and data. It doesn't exist today. It's basically, as I said, built for a 1970s system as compared to a system for today. It needs to be updated for the 21st century. Calls that are made to the statewide central registry should be recorded. Right now they're not, or if they are, they're not being kept for any period of time nor being shared with the local agencies. They need to be recorded because critical information comes in those calls and can be lost. We also want information from those calls transmitted to the local agencies. We want to require that all of these call information and local history with regards to a child and a family be transmitted to the local Child Protective Service for investigation. Why does this matter? We may have information as it pertains to Erie County, but if a child and his family was in Oneida County and moved here, we may not have all that access. It's important that we get that information from the state. We certainly want to see technological improvements to the statewide central registry, including internet reporting and allowing photographs to be submitted. If a family member has a photograph of a child, which indicates the child was beaten, they should be able to send that to the state. But right now they can't. So they can make a call, and then we'll get the information, and the Child Protective Service worker may go out there and say, I didn't see any evidence of the child being beaten. Well, if a family member has evidence, we want to see it. It should be able to be submitted through the statewide system. It is not right now. Another system change that we believe is essential is under state law, Child Protective Service workers in any county can be reimbursed up to 65%, except it needs the approval of the budget director, and often that doesn't happen, so local agencies are unfortunately left out on their own to pay for many of these matters, even though the state supposedly pays for it. We think it's time to change that. We think it's time that the state be a partner. They need to be a partner in these reforms. We also ask them to remove unrelated information from fatality reports. There's a lot of information that's contained in fatality reports that is not essential towards the determination of what happened in the fatality, and truthfully whether a local Child Protective Service agency did something wrong. We don't need that information in there. The public doesn't need to have that information in there. We think it should be removed, and we call on the Office of Children and Family Services to do the same. Finally, when it comes to unsafe sleeping practices, we're not just talking about Child Protective Services. We want to teach parents about unsafe sleeping practices in hospitals. So we want to pass a law, which is very similar to what exists with regards to shaken baby syndrome, where a parent learns not to shake their child when they're in the hospital. We want to require hospitals and birth centers to provide leaflets and show a video on safe and unsafe sleeping practices. As stated, since the beginning of this year, 6 children have died because of unsafe sleeping conditions. Those deaths could have been prevented and probably would have been prevented if parents had realized that they were putting their children in unsafe sleeping conditions. We believe it's essential for parents to know that, and that's why we're asking the state to change and make that a requirement of all local hospitals, statewide birthing centers to do that. Finally, when it comes to a couple other critical reforms, right now CPS is hamstrung with the civil service system. We can request tests so that we can hire CPS workers, but unfortunately it falls in line with everything else, which means the test may not be issued for 3 years. Who knows? Depends on how the system goes. We want it to be prioritized so that if a local social service commissioner requests a test for CPS workers in their county, they're able to get it ASAP. We think that's very important. And also, if a local social service commissioner discloses information pertaining to child abuse or maltreatment, if it's done in good faith adherence to state law, there's no violation. Right now, a social service worker, social service commissioner, or anybody else who releases information about any case is in violation of state law and could be persecuted for that. We don't think it's fair if a good faith effort is being made by the local commissioner to release that information as needed. There are 19 proposals in all. We believe these proposals will make a difference in the lives of our people and our children and our community. Today, Erie County is leading the way for CPS reform statewide with a comprehensive package of proposals that is common sense, easy to implement, and long overdue. Passage of these reforms will ensure a stronger system to protect children, not just in Erie County, but statewide. I call on the New York State Legislature, Governor Andrew Cuomo, to sign off on legislation to make our children safer by enacting what we propose into law. We've done the heavy lifting. We've done the hard part. We've drafted the bills. We've drafted the bill memorandum. There's nothing that local officials in the Assembly and Senate need to do other than introduce them and get them passed. They should have been passed decades ago. Now's the time to do it, and I call on them to do it as the remainder of the session continues in Albany. Each one of these packages is right now being sent to each of the members of the Assembly and Senate from our local delegation, as well as the chair people associated with the Assembly and Senate committees on children and families. So they're receiving a copy of this as we speak, and we certainly hope that they will pass it as the session continues because it's that important. And I once again want to thank each and every one of the members of my staff who worked many, many hours to put together this package of materials. It's comprehensive. We started out with nearly 50, and pared it down to 19. But these are 19 reforms